Hey, what's up guys? This is a really special video. I wanted to make this. I was at work and I was thinking, why would people even bother listening to me? Basically telling you to make magical items. And I tell you why. Oh, well, this and that. The planets and the stars and the zodiac and all this other nonsense. Why even believe me? Why not, just say, this guy's crazy. You can. You don't have to believe me. But I thought about it, and I remembered exactly why this makes sense to me. I mean, when you learn certain things, like if you learn math, and it's like, oh, 1 + 1 does equal 2. Well, I mean, it's not like that for this, but after reading a bunch of sources, for a while, you're like, what? And then it just goes, I get it. I want to share with you why I think that this insane or seemingly crazy practice of doing talismanic magic makes sense to me. And I'm condensing this down for you. I mean, I think this took about maybe 7 to 8 years to really sink in. I mean, like, really sink in. It's not like, oh yeah, I read this, I get it now. No, it's like, oh. That's kind of how I think of it. That was what happened with me. I wrote on this little card here the reasons why I think this traditional form of astrology makes sense. Now, before I go into it, I wanted to read something that someone long dead and long forgotten said. And, I mean, if you're a Kabbalist, you probably have heard, I'm going to get this name wrong, the Zim Zone. It's Tzim, Tzum. That's how you spell it. And it's roughly translated as the contraction or the reduction. How does this make sense, and why am I telling you? Well, somewhere back in the 16th century, there was a guy, I don't know his name, but he was really smart, and this is what came of it. And I'm going to read this to you. It's not a poem, but it's just something. Know this, before emanations and creations, a simple light filled all of existence. All was full with simplicity, with infinite light. No beginning, no end. All was one uniform light. Now the will to create worlds and emanations emerged. Now the infinite contracted self in the center of its light, withdrawing from that center to the sides surrounding, leaving an empty space, a void. So what does that mean? And why does that matter? We'll get into that in a few minutes. I know I say that all the time, but I'm actually going to do it. I also want to express this explanation of this. This is not mine, but I'm sharing it with you because hopefully it will make sense after I explain why this shit should make sense to you. So this is what it says. It says, God's relationship to the void is illustrated and explained by what is perhaps the most original Kabbalistic concept, the notion of the Zim Zone. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's how it looks, so I'm just going to pronounce it like that. And this word literally means contraction or reduction. This is God's complete contraction into himself, concealment and withdrawal. Here, God withdraws in order to allow space and time to continue and bring forth itself into being. It is the ultimate first act of creation for the Kabbalah. God creates out of an act of an excess of divine love and creation by limiting the divine self to allow something non-divine to arise. And what arises here is nothingness itself, which is immediately marked by its name, the mark of the void, which is the holy name. That is, it is a hollow that is made once God withdraws from the world. Before this, as it were, there was no before. Time and space themselves are only enacted once the absolutely infinite creates an empty space and a hollowing. Before, there is only the unending light of God. Now, why do I tell you this? I'm not here to preach to you. I'm not here to tell you what religion to follow. I'm only here to tell you what I have learned and what I think makes sense. And you don't have to listen to me. You can say, fuck this guy, turn off your computer and throw it out the window. I don't care. But I'm sure that you probably have not heard things like these before. And if you have, well, that's great. here's the list of why I think astrology makes sense. Now, I'm not going to do a presentation. Oh, this is a form from work. Anyway, so why does this make sense? Well, it talked about light. In the ancient times, light, as we know it, was considered a lot of things. I mean, you could consider it basically consciousness in a way. You know how people think of he was illuminated, or the light of God's will, or some such thing. I mean, these things are ancient. They've been around for a long time, and with good reason too. When you shine a light on something, it illuminates it, and you see something, and it makes sense. Like, think about, you're in a dark room and you have a flashlight. You flash it around the room, and you look and you ascertain certain things. Oh, there's my bed. Oh, there's my trash can full of cockroaches wandering around because I threw that Sheets burger out and nobody's eating it. You find out stuff about it through light. Light is energy, and light is consciousness made into matter, so to speak. So, in addition to that, we all know how our solar system works. All of the however many planets you want to count, I count 7. I know that there are other ones, but these are the important ones. All of the planets revolve around the sun, and the sun is the source of light. Without the sun, we would die. I don't care what you think. I don't care if you don't think astrology is real. Without the sun, we are fucking dead. Sorry. So, the ancients thought that as extremely significant. I mean, have you ever heard the phrase, to look into the face of God is to be blind, or something along that line? Well, try looking at the sun. What's going to happen? Oh, I'm blind. The ancients thought that, in a way, the sun was the face of God, and the sun was God itself. I mean, if you look back in ancient history, you will find tons of cults that worship the sun as God. So why is this? Well, in astrology, we have the 7 planets: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. Hopefully I counted 7. All of them receive light minus the Sun, because the Sun is delivering light. All of the other 6 planets receive the Sun's divine light. That's how a lot of this energy is transmitted. It receives light and it's filtered in such a way. So for example, let's say Jupiter gets the Sun's light. Awesome! That's good. Jupiter's the greater benefic. You get the sun's light and it... See, this is where it gets confusing, because if I try to explain it in such a way where it makes sense, it's not going to. But I'm going to just say this. The way how Jupiter was explained, it's good. So it receives God, the sun's light, and it does what it will with it, because that's just what Jupiter is. The same thing with Saturn. Saturn has methods of doing things, and by taking on the sun's light, each planet transmits their energy through the sun's light from themselves to planet Earth. Now I know that sounds like that's fucking bullshit and you have no way of proving that. You're right, I don't. But that's the theory. So, that's how it works. All of these things are transmitted through light. And, I mean, I think it makes sense. I can't explain to you why I think it makes sense, but if you think about it when you're basking, just think about this when you're on the beach next time, when you go on vacation, when you get away from the hell that is work, you sit there on the beach probably playing football with your bros or whatever, getting that sun-bleached tan that hopefully you won't get cancer from. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just being snarky. But let's say you're tanning and whatnot on the beach. Well, you feel, most of the time if I'm in the sun, I feel like I'm full of life. It's just what the sun does. Like, there's no it's not, it's cold. You can think that if you want, but that's complete bullshit and you're wrong. The sun gives life because of the heat and the light that it dispenses from itself. And it's going to do so for a long, long time. That's where the idea comes from. Without the sun, there can be no life. And I know you'll probably think, well, what about on the ocean floors and whatnot? Well, there's still heat, so... And there's... I mean, stuff will still exist as long as there is heat. And, I mean, you can probably not live without light, but for some reason this makes sense to the ancients, so it's good enough for me. I am sure that there's tons of holes in the argument that you can probably gleefully poke into, but this is how it works. So, I already covered a lot about light. I mean, it's this... think about any video game you've ever played. I know that it doesn't really relate to video games, but, you know, light is usually, like, good. You know, it's the light and life of the world. I can't keep expressing enough how seriously significant the idea of light as spirit incarnate, energy, and just the source of all things that are existing. That plays heavily in astrology. Without the transmission of light from the sun to other planets onto ourselves at certain times, well, things wouldn't work out the way that they are. So, another thing that I want to kind of talk about is, so this is the thing that I thought of that I struggled with a long time. You know, why is it the time that's important for when you're born? Well, can it be, well, I was in my mother's womb for 500,000 years. Well, okay, cool. The ancients believed, and this is what I think, and this is probably going to cause a lot of pro-lifers to really get pissed off at me. Sorry. But the ancients believed that a thing, usually a thing is referred to as man, like humanity. It is born and it takes upon the energies that the planets are transmitting from the sun's light upon the first breath of being born. And there you are, you're born. So why is this? Why does this make sense? And why is it not? And it's interesting because there are tons of things that happen prior to when you're born that can be explained in your natal chart. For example, why are my parents, rich? Well, when you're born, I mean, you look at the 4th house, or you look at the 10th house, you look at somewhere. Usually it's the 4th house, or the 10th house, mother for father, you know what I mean? Actually you don't, but, well, I don't have time for this video to explain that. But the main takeaway for this topic is the time when you are popped out of the canal and you take your first breath as a baby. The energies and influences from the 7 planets are all transmitted into you. And you take on the energies of the universe, or the solar system, I guess, at that time where they are positioned in the sky. I know that's a little weird to consider because, I mean, it sounds stupid and it sounds ridiculous. I've heard a lot of things in the past and in history where they say, oh, this person was born at a certain time under a certain star and what have you. I mean, I think that makes sense. It would allow for them to understand when to give birth to children to create great emperors. In fact, I think that's why Julius Caesar, I think that's why his mother had him be given a C-section. That's why it was created. History buffs can correct me if I'm wrong, but that always made sense to me. Oh, and just as a disclaimer, I know how ridiculous this all sounds, but it's like, oh, well, I want to give birth at this time, do it now, dude. And you just like rip the baby out of the stomach. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. Like, it kind of makes sense. If you look into it, after a while you realize, oh shit, this all kind of makes sense in a weird way. I think the thing that I'm getting at is when you're, and I've already said this, when you're born, when you take your first breath on this mortal plane, that is when you are going, that is when everything, all the influences from the 7 planets solidify in such a way that it cements the way how your life is going to go for the most part. Now, I know that there are always complications, but in theory and in practice, that is what I think happens. So you can't say, oh, well, my mom felt me kicking in my stomach 2 hours before I was born, so that's when it happens. I don't think that's how it works, because you still have to take a breath from the mortal world in order to gain the planetary influences. And in a weird way, the way how I link this back to talismans is, in a way, we all are talismans. I know that's going to sound really strange, but we are. We are consecrated at birth, we are given life, and we act the way that the planets are seeing fit in the sky. There's really not any other way that I can explain that any easier than it sounding completely and utterly bizarre. But usually I found that the strangest things tend to be kind of correct. I know you can probably call this bullshit or whatever, but I've thought long and hard about why this stuff makes sense, and that is what I've come to the conclusion of. Now, of course, you might have different opinions, and that's okay. I'm not here to preach to you. I'm not here to hold your hand, unless you want to learn magic, but I figured I would give you this video to explain why they do things the way they do. Why are you doing talismans? Well, you either want something, or you want to be in touch with a spiritual being that can hopefully help you, or feel more complete or whole, or have a friend. But that's how the ancients saw it. And if anyone has any different opinions, I would be really happy to hear them. But as far as it goes, and I've thought about this for years now, and I think this makes the most sense to me. As always, you are more than welcome to make a comment down below. I don't care what you say. Spread the word. I hope that you like these videos. I know this is kind of a more religious and kind of esoteric video. It's not really, ooh, do magic. But I wanted to explain, I wanted to tell you, where this idea comes from. Like, it's not like, oh, kill these babies and whatnot, or it's not some weird, strange, hide in the dark, do this shit kind of stuff. It's just a lot of the stuff that we don't really think about. A lot of it is behind the curtain, what drives us all to do certain things. Anyway, before I start rambling and making a 52-minute video, I will end it here. And if you have any questions, feel free to direct message me or comment or do anything. Alright, thanks guys. Hope you like this. And I'll have probably more videos coming soon. Alright, take care.